Let's turn our attention now to Share School with independent investment expert Roger Montgomery. Now, let's start with JB Hi-Fi and Harvey Norman, and particularly Harvey Norman. No, so JB.
Do you want to do Harvey Norman first?
Well, if you can pull up, it's fine. The reason why is that last time you were on the program, you thought where it was fair value. About fair value.
Yeah.
Then it came out with a mediocre report this week.
Well, the headline number was good.
Yeah.
But when they left out the third quarter 2000, they left out the previous corresponding period's third quarter numbers, and when you put those back in, the numbers were actually lower. So there was a decline in sales over a previous corresponding period.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that what Gerry's basically saying that the sales are there, but the prices are down because the Aus dollar, and also there's a glut of electrical goods. And so I think in my program last night I said a TV that once sold for 1,100 is now being sold for about 800.
Yeah, I mean Gerry's a smart bloke. You know, I think you've probably had him on the program.
Yeah.
But Gerry, the reality is that JB Hi-Fi is in the same market, selling the same stuff, and doing a better job of it.
Yeah,
that's the reality.
Fighting words. He hasn't been on the program. He's been on other programs of mine, but he'll come on after that. Thanks very much, Roger.
That's all right. No problem.
Excellent. But is it still on your calculations fair value?
Yeah. Well, look, my valuation is $3.39. At the moment, we've got the share price there. So it's still trading at about its intrinsic value. I've got value going up next year to $3.82, and then the year after to $4.21. So it's a 28%, roughly 28% increase in intrinsic value over the next 2 years. But the reality is that this business is close to saturation point, and he'll pull a rabbit out of the hat and surprise everyone again in the future. But
entrepreneurs do that sort of thing.
Australia's only got 22 million people. We're not a big country, and I suspect that over time what we'll find is that the decision to move overseas, which now looks like a bad decision on Gerry's part.
He's got exposure to Europe and Ireland, hasn't he?
Exactly, but I think what will happen over long periods of time is that you'll find that the relative performance will narrow. So Australia will slow down and Europe will start to improve, and then it'll go the other way, and Europe will do better than Australia. But that will be some years down the track, and whether or not the enthusiasm of Katie and Gerry are there at that time, that's anyone's guess.
Well, as long as Gerry's alive, I think he'd be enthusiastic, because
no doubt
that's what he does. He loves retail, that guy.
I was deliberately being diplomatic.
All right, now what about JB Hi-Fi? You've clearly given it the bigger tick.
Yeah, well, look, if I was going to invest in either of these two businesses, it would always be JB Hi-Fi. It's got a higher return on equity. Its prospects for, and I'll just pull it up now, its prospects for intrinsic value are significantly better. Its intrinsic value at the moment is about $21.72 or $21.75, and as you can see there, it's trading below $20 at the moment. In fact, closer to $19 than $20. But its value next year, if it hits its numbers, rises to close to $26, and then the year after, close to $30. So that's a substantial, you're talking about a 50% increase in intrinsic value over the next 2 years. But of course it's dependent on whether or not Terry Smart can pull out the same results that Richard Uechtritz has been able to do. Now they've been together a long time, so I suspect he's learnt well.
So a variable like that is one that could change the way you calculate your intrinsic value.
I think I might have mentioned this last time I was on, but every time a company updates its performance, it makes an acquisition, it sells an asset, it raises capital, it borrows money. All of those things can change the intrinsic value and the prospects for the business. And that's true in business. What we're doing is we're buying pieces of businesses. But what I know is I receive a lot of tips. And I'm sure many of your viewers get lots and lots of tips. What I've got to do is I've got to take all of those ideas and consistently measure them and say, well, okay, well, if I run them through my filters, which ones are the ones that actually meet my criteria? And JB Hi-Fi meets the criteria better than Gerry Harvey's Harvey Norman does.
Okay.